Hello, welcome. This is a very thrown together panel. I came to Salute with this idea last year. It's a thing I know that everyone up here with me is very passionate about, and we're excited to talk to you about it. So we'll go straight in. First, I'll do some introductions. I'm James. I run Department of Wargaming. We are a very small little indie war games company based out of Somerset. We do tiny little games with an emphasis on sustainability. I need to get that word right. Emphasis on sustainability. Yeah, that's us. Go down the line. Simon.
Sure, thank you. My name's Simon. I am, by day, a YouTuber specializing in environmental issues, specifically climate, and by night, when parenting allows, I am a wargamer. Specifically, I play a lot of 40k, Kill Team, that kind of stuff, and more recently, Gaslands. And I'm excited on this panel to sort of get those two worlds to mesh together and look at the Venn diagram overlap.
Hello, I'm Bill. This is about sustainable wargaming, right? Okay. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I just make things out of anything you can find in the house, and I edit videos weird. Look, Ben, it's hard. I don't know what to say. Yeah, that's what I do. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, I gotta test this. Yes. Hi, I'm Tina. I sometimes make videos when I have time. I also use whatever I can find, so I guess I'll have something to say. I also organize community events like Camp and Kit Bash, where we spend a whole weekend kit bashing together and think about community, recycling, whatever. So that's kind of what I do.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben. On Instagram, I'm called Apocrypha Now. I'm a hobbyist, first and foremost, but I've started dabbling with games design recently, and I frequently post angry rants online about sustainability in wargaming, which is probably why I'm here.
All right, so I have a list of questions. We may get through some of them. We may just get through one. We'll see how it goes. First off, anyone feel free to jump in. What do we think about the current state of sustainability in wargaming?
I was going to say, if you've been ranting about this, I think you should take the
Don't
first
get
one.
me started. Yeah. So I'm particularly aggrieved by some of the larger companies' kind of planned obsolescence models, which are particularly bad. Sort of constant product cycles, the sort of FOMO thing, products with a life cycle of only 18 months. I think it's quite bad. And I think it's one of the strengths of the indie community that we have games where you need less stuff. You have to consume less stuff. You can have smaller armies, smaller collections of models, and quite often much more innovative, better rule systems as well. So that's what I'm trying to champion as an alternative.
Do you know any games like that, Ben?
Now you mention it, Bill, yes, I do.
Tonks.
and others, yes.
I mean,
Look at me.
I'll offer something, not exactly a counterpoint, because I think we have to keep, when we're talking about sustainability of wargaming as a hobby, we have to keep it in context, right? We have to consider the sustainability and the environmental impact of what we do compared to other pastimes that people engage in. And I think, like, on the grand scheme of things, hobbying and wargaming is actually relatively low impact compared to a lot of other activities. If you compare it to a lot of sports, for example, there's far less traveling that's typically involved. There's far less specialist kit that is very resource intense for certain sports. I'm thinking golf, especially. Like, anybody who plays golf, I hate to break it to you, but it's a pretty terrible hobby when it comes to the environment in terms of water use, in terms of land use, impacts on wildlife, all that kind of stuff. So it's something to keep in mind, that we have to sort of keep it in context. And something that I suspect will come back to over and over again over this panel is the impact of individuals versus the impact of industry, and individual responsibility versus industrial and societal, I guess, sustainability. Because it's obviously going to vary case by case, and I think we're probably going to showcase what it's like to do wargaming as sustainably as possible and to limit our impact. but also it's going to be worth talking about what can be done from an industry perspective. And I imagine that's something that you guys can speak to much more than I can. But I mean, to answer, like, what is sustainability like in wargaming? I think it's nowhere near as bad as a lot of other pastimes, and I think a lot of people feel profound guilt about something that we do need to keep in context. To provide a number, if you divide the total amount of plastic production worldwide by the number of people, on average, we produce 50 kilos of plastic per person on Earth every year. Now, that's horrific, like, hopefully, just to put that out there. But also, I can't speak to everybody else's hobby experience, but if you put the amount of plastic that you consume in your hobby every year, for me, that is a very small percentage of 50 kilos. I do not actually require very much additional plastic per year to engage with the hobby. And this is where the planned obsolescence stuff really comes back to bite you in the ass. Because if I was to play a game system where I had to update my army every 18 months, then that would be, just additional plastic that gets made. As it is, my main army, which is Hawaiian Orcs, they have been the same models for the past 5 or 6 years. I add to them a little bit at a time, but the same models are still applicable. And that's the kind of practice that, is definitely a positive influence. So, overall thesis, how bad is it? Not as bad as it is for other people. That's still not to say that we can't do a lot better, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also single-use plastics is a big problem, and I think miniatures are anything but single-use plastics because you keep on using them, and even if you've got a mini that you don't use anymore, a lot more people are kit bashing and have been kit bashing for ages. So yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Well, adding on to that, and definitely not to blow my own horn or anything, one of the big things I've been looking into with Department of Wargaming and running my own company is having things like all of the models we make, the model kits we make, use biodegradable plastics. I found out criminally recently that PLA is a biodegradable plastic. It's a biochemical based plastic and does biodegrade a lot quicker than any other plastics we got, especially injection molding and things like that. So kind of putting an emphasis on making models using that system and using that material definitely goes a long way, because it means that, for whatever reason you do throw your models out, they're not killing a turtle somewhere. They're actually improving. They're doing slightly better than they were before.
And actually, on that point, I mean, I'm going to do something which is unusual, which is say something positive about Games Workshop.
Oh my God.
And that is that they did introduce the sprue recycling scheme because high impact polystyrene, which is what Games Workshop plastics are made out of, is not typically recyclable, but there are ways of doing it. A company called TerraCycle does recycle it. I actually emailed Games Workshop ahead of this panel to see what the uptake had been like, and unfortunately they haven't gotten back to me yet. If they do, I will post that on my socials if people would like some numbers. But I do want to single that out as, I think, a very positive step from a industry perspective of the sprues that, can sometimes represent a pretty sizable fraction of the overall plastic in a kit. By making that recycling easy and taking some corporate responsibility, I think that's a very positive step.
So following off of that, does anyone have anything to say on what maybe people can do on a individual basis to maybe improve sustainability in some way?
You could just not throw anything out and just build stuff with it. I mean, I guess that's why I'm on this panel, because I don't throw anything out and I build stuff. I don't know about all the details and the environmental. I guess I'm very environmentally friendly, but unaware of it. Yeah, so just don't throw anything out and make weird giant towers and terrain with it. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think that's where community also comes in, because if you have a local community where a lot of people buy miniatures and you buy a kit, but maybe you don't want all the little things in it, and then if you have a local community, you can just exchange the bits. I shop a lot at secondhand shops because there's so many secondhand shops that have a bunch of stuff that no one would buy. I worked a lot with like dolls, creepy dolls, and like toys that kids don't really want anymore because it's kind of gross. And they're at secondhand shops. They're great for kit bashing. I've also recently befriended someone who receives foam because I use so much insulation foam, and she basically drives her car to a factory and she gets a bunch of the offcuts, and then we redistribute it to the people who only need small amounts, because insulation foam is really good for terrain crafting and people use it for their houses and they use huge amounts, but we only need like small bits. And I think that's a great way of recycling and finding objects to make stuff about. You don't need to always buy new things, and that's
Plus, it's
the
more
easiest
fun.
one. Plus, it's a lot more
more fun to
fun. Why would you buy
Be
a new
scavenger.
thing?
That's what I am. A scavenger. It's more fun.
Absolutely.
I think those are all really good examples of like circularizing the sort of hobby economy, and it brings together the community as well. You think about sharing, kit bashing, secondhand minis. Those are all ways to break that kind of take, make, consume linear model that the larger organizations rely on for their own growth and profits. And that's something we can do as individuals is circularize that post-market part of the hobby, which is something I try to do and encourage others to do.
eBay I just want to throw that out there. Like eBay is absolutely your friend when it comes to not sourcing new hobbies. So I'm working on a competition entry piece. I think it's entirely eBay pieces. I don't think I bought anything new to actually make it. It's also one of the reasons why I found Gaslands particularly appealing. If people haven't played Gaslands before, it's Hot Wheel cars. You can get them for like 50p from the British Heart Foundation, and suddenly you've got a wargaming piece that will last you for years and years. You can put crap on it, and you can do bits, do conversions and stuff with all the other bits that you're not throwing out. I mean, I'm sure, put your hand up on this panel if you have an enormous bits box that you're never ever going to use everything
It's a very
from.
personal question.
Right?
Just put your hand up, Ben.
It's we all have far more stuff than we actually are ever going to get through. So just start using it, and maybe that is the choice of game that you're going to work with. But also, yeah, like I hate to break it down to like a cliche, but the whole reduce, reuse, recycle like does kind of apply here, right? Like recycling is kind of the worst option, as we heard, because you can't really recycle a lot of these plastics. Reusing, fantastic. Reuse your own models for multiple systems, reuse models that have come from someone else on eBay. And then also, I mean, just buy less. I know that's really hard to hear in this community. I really do
Or
hear
just
it.
buy more.
But, the less stuff, the better, right? And so being innovative, as we've, and if you want inspiration for this, by the way, 2 YouTube channels you should check out. eBay Miniature Rescues does fantastic work.
Filmmaking stuff, right?
And, exactly, you took the words out of my mouth. So 3rd channel, oh gosh, now you've completely put him out of my head. Australian guy, Miscast. Miscast, really, really good channel that makes stuff with, what would probably get thrown away by a lot of other hobbyists. So, it's another way to express yourself with a hobby. What's not to love?
I think another part that maybe we haven't touched upon, like a big thing that's also not very eco-friendly, is shipping, and the fact that we've developed a system of 3D printing, which of course has its own footprint, but that now instead of having to buy something from America, I can buy the STL and then print it out in my own studio, is a huge saving of airplanes needing to ship me miniatures. So if you have a friend who's got a 3D printer, like you don't even need to do it yourself. I think that's also really a cool development.
I think even more simply as well, just play more games. You don't actually need more models. I hate to say it, but play more games. The more games you play, and you just use those same models for all those different games, the cost per use goes down massively when you play, 2 games with the same models instead of just 1. And yeah, I think that's often overlooked. And events where you can just go out and try games, just bring a bunch of models with you. Doesn't matter what kind of weird creations they are. There is no such thing as a models agnostic game. All games are models agnostic. You can use your models for anything. I know certain companies like telling you what models to use for their games, but you can use whatever models. You don't have to listen to that.
Has anyone ever thrown away a miniature? Has anyone ever thrown away a miniature?
God, no.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think you'd be
Anyone
allowed
out
on the
there?
panel if you had.
Anyone thrown away a miniature?
I think I even don't throw away my misprints. But when I 3D print something and it comes out like all mangled, I will never throw it away.
This is the other thing, right? Like, if we're talking about the amount of plastic that you buy in a year for the hobby, how much of that has actually entered the environment? In my case, barely anything, because it's all mostly unpainted still on my shelf. But even the stuff that has been painted, it is on my shelf. I haven't thrown it away. There are some models that I've given away to people. But yeah, like the actual impact of this stuff, it's non-existent because I don't let it spill out into the environment. And yeah, I can't imagine. It's like giving away a child. I can't imagine
you won't
throwing
get
away a
community
model.
service, people going along picking up miniatures off the floor, would you? You know, on a roadside. So I think we're okay. I think you're good. We're all good, everyone. Yeah, we're all pretty
We didn't need this
sustainable.
panel. It turns out
Fixed
we're all
it,
fine.
We're off to the pub.
No, you know, there are various things. Things like sprue can be a very big impact. A lot of big companies have a lot of sprue. Making things out of that terrain is really easy to make. Tiny spaceships. Look at my back on the way out. You'll understand.
Bit of sprue goo.
Yeah, sprue goo helps with everything.
I also
Walls-
think, if I can add something, Ramshackle Games, a lot of other people now as well have started like with molding and casting. Instead of there being a lot of leftover stuff in your mold, you just make the sprue something interesting that you can use in your terrain. And
The sprues are like sandbags and bits
Exactly.
of terrain, aren't they?
or weird skulls, which is just a small thing, but it makes it also a nicer product.
Yeah, definitely. And those are like really big things that I think, you know, if you take that on yourself as on an individual level, it can open up new avenues of the hobby for you and allow you to make things that you'd otherwise look at and go, you know, what's the point in this? And maybe you would just throw it away. But you know, if you look at sprue as extra models, then you'll never throw it away again. You'll unfortunately hoard lots of it. That's the only downside. But yeah, having more isn't necessarily worse when you can do more with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a giant crate for the sprues, but the trick is to chop it into little pieces and then just melt it in a jar. That's what I do. True, right? That's what I do.
Maybe
I never
adult
use it.
supervision for that one.
Chuck it on a bonfire. That's a joke, by the way.
Wow, I'm looking through my questions and we've answered a lot of them.
I mean, I just want to return to something that we sort of touched on earlier.
Thank you.
Which is this notion that like we are made to feel that we are supremely responsible for our impact on the environment, right? And I think we have to accept a certain level of individual responsibility of if you're going to do a hobby that uses some raw materials in one form or another, then yeah, it is kind of down to you in terms of when that or if that enters into the environment. But I do think we also have a collective role to play in terms of what the industry is doing. So an example with, you know, turning sprue gates into things that are actually then useful for the hobby, that's a great example of how a company can make a difference. They can also make difference in terms of their supply chains, where they source their plastic, so you know what type of plastic they are using, and also how we organize events. As that intermediate step of social organization of if you're doing a wargaming event, this is a fantastic example that can make sure it's accessible by public transport. If you design an event that can only be accessed by car, obviously you're limiting accessibility anyway, but you're also increasing the environmental footprint of that event and by extension the hobby. So I think it's a trap to just consider just what you do as an individual. And I think maybe something that's missing from the hobby, and maybe this is something that we can start doing more of going forwards, is actually demanding collective action from the big companies. So from your Games Workshops, your Hasbros, actually saying as a community, we want these things. We want you to minimize the waste to we want you to get the product to waste ratio as high as possible in your plastic products. We want you to look into biodegradable plastics, expand your TerraCycling schemes. I think that's something that maybe I need to make a video about this, and maybe we just need to like start a campaign to get the attention of at least one of these companies, because I feel
just
like
hope that Warhammer doesn't put on like a Warhammer cruise ship, because that would be really bad. That's like one of the
Yeah.
worst things.
You haven't seen the ad yet, then.
I haven't, but I'm sure it's coming.
they'll fuel it by just shoveling sprues into the engine. But I do think, I don't know, that there's a certain sense more broadly than just wargaming that we almost have to feel guilty about our individual impact in a way that I just find particularly troubling. I think it's in a way that minimizes the impact of like collective action. For example, I Googled ahead of this examples of sustainable and unsustainable hobbies. I shit you not. 3 hobbies that were listed if you wanted to have a sustainable hobby were raising monarch butterflies, litter picking, and meditation. Now, I'm not going to disparage any people for doing any of those things, but I mean, come on.
Why that one type of butterfly?
I don't know. I mean, they are in danger. They are in trouble, to be fair.
Are there others that are worse?
They're the big migratory species that go from South America to North America, and
yeah, if you
they're in
collect
trouble.
the endangered one, I don't think that.
I
that's
think
very
it's just the other
sustainable.
ones. I think the other ones just pollute the planet.
The other ones are ugly.
Not great.
Yeah, the shell butterfly, the BP butterfly, they're all terrible. But yeah, I just feel like it's the same thing with anything we do in our lives. Like, it's the things that make life worth living. I'm not going to say that wargaming specifically is what only makes my life worth living, but it's something that brings joy to my life, and it's something that I think you can engage with in a sustainable way. You can minimize your impact, and that's okay. You are doing the best that you can within the systems that exist. Do that best, try to change the systems, and live your life, because otherwise we're all just going to be miserable.
Well, on that really light topic, is there any kind of similarly final things or thoughts that people want to say? Any ideas to give out to people to maybe make their hobbies a bit more sustainable?
Subscribe to making stuff, but no, I thought we could whittle more with wood.
Absolutely.
Like whittling. I'm serious. Why does everyone look at me like that? I mean, just get a bit of wood and whittle it with a knife, make your
You're
I
miniature.
think one of my friends just bought
trying to come
a
up with
book
solutions.
about whittling tiny little wooden guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you're thinking a 28mm scale.
28
whittle.
mil
we
wooden
can do it.
guys.
We figure it out. Don't worry.
But that I think goes to the point we touched on earlier, that like games can be miniature agnostic. So you can have an army that you can use in this game, whatever. You can put them on square bases and movement trays to play a rank and flank game. You can put them on round bases for a skirmish game. You have a versatile collection. But I think the next step is whittling and like what's a war games miniature? Does it have to be an injection molded kit or a print? We've seen lots of creatives recently sculpting things with natural materials. We've
Just
seen
use
people-
rocks.
Yeah, rocks. Just tiddlywinks. But like anything, I think that within the indie community, we've seen when people start thinking outside the box and using weirder materials, that kind of the restriction of not using a commercially available kit can sometimes drive very imaginative results. So for me, one of the best bits about trying to pursue the hobby sustainably is that it spawns that kind of innovation and that drive to do things creatively as well. And it's great for community, it's great for your own like physical and mental health and well-being as well. And you can have a lot more fun doing it than just making Space Marines look like everyone else's Space Marines. You can
I mean,
do
I
your own
can't believe I
stuff.
didn't say beads.
Nothing wrong with that as well. But
Everyone has
Yeah,
beads.
no, of course.
have you thought about beads?
What could you make with beads, Bill?
Oh, well.
To riff off of that 1 second. So one of the big issues with carbon capture as an industry is that you need to remove the carbon from the atmosphere and store it somewhere that is never going to get back to the atmosphere, right? So what if we created a miniatures company where you extract the carbon from the atmosphere, you put it into a form that then you sculpt into models, and then people buy those models and they sit unpainted for hundreds of years,
Sequestering
the carbon from the atmosphere.
I think if you just give those out to anyone in this room, and that is a solid idea.
Right, I will take investors after this panel.
Could we do the same with like nuclear waste? No.
Yes, but only very briefly.
And you don't have to paint them because they glow.
Yeah, I always like in sustainability news things, you always see, oh, we're making this out of mushrooms now. Can we make a miniature out of that mushroom material? And then it just grows mushrooms out of it. That okay.
Do you mean
I have a next video.
Do you mean orcs? I think that's just what you just described.
Yeah, but like orcs out of actual mushrooms.
Those might not last as long. If you paint
Yeah, but
over them,
They
might
only
go
need
a
to
bit
last for
moldy.
one game
but
because
they
I
could
will
be-
lose and they will die.
They could be delicious though as well.
Once you painted them, Ben.
I mean, on that topic, yesterday there was an amazing demonstration with was it Banhouse Miniatures on like natural materials, and yeah, using just things you find around. Like that's doesn't have to be inside. It maybe helps if we get rid of man-made materials and make them into things that you're actually going to use instead of throwing them away. But outside has a lot of stuff as well.
What's that?
Sticks. Oh, I
Outside?
know, I know. Sticks are like nature's sprue, so just use those. That works well as well.
I want that on a t-shirt. That's amazing.
It's on my website. And oh, coffee grounds. People use coffee grounds. Everyone drinks coffee a lot. Great basing material. Yeah, that's another good, another good idea, I guess.
The basing, like Sterling mud and the Citadel basing materials, is basically paint with microplastics. So definitely preferable. That's maybe a specific actionable item is to use that sustainable materials rather than just microplastics.
Or sand.
Yeah.
Crusted. Heard of crusted? You
Or
won't know about it. It's quite new.
block and a goblin green rim as is the only way to base models.
I've also tried to make my own flock out of like hemp rope, and it works perfectly fine. Yeah.
Takes about 2 days to chop it all up, but it does.
Yeah.
It works really well.
Watch a Netflix show, chop up some hemp rope.
That is everyone's afternoon sorted. Please go home, buy some hemp rope, and just make flock, apparently.
Tag me.
Amazing. Is there any other things anyone wants to say on sustainability, or do we want this fine public to ask us some questions?
Yeah, don't spend any of your money on miniatures. Just give all your money to YouTubers' Patreon accounts. That's the best way, and then they'll teach you how to save more money in the future. It's like an investment. That's what I have to say about that. Okay.
I think on reflection we should take some questions.
Yeah, let's do audience questions. Anyone have any questions for anyone, either specifically or the whole panel? Yeah, over on the right over there. Yeah, so on the right over there.
Hi. Yeah, is that there we go. As in mentioning sort of sustainability and community action as a as a path to getting the hobby closer to that sustainable ideal, is there any recommendations you would make for organizing local events or things that you might want to bring people to either do sprue swaps or putting miniatures out there, or like kit bashing events, things like that would be good to know about.
I may be slightly biased because I help organize their events, but Fringe are a great community of people now all over the country. They have events all over this weekend. They're a great group of people, but there are loads of those communities out there. Just ask around, find new people. Schools and things like that are slowly becoming better places for wargaming and stuff
Can
like
I be
that.
in Fringe? Can I be in Fringe? Yeah. Is it for every? Okay. Never heard of it till today. Was telling me.
Yeah, one of the things I advocate, a lot of the things I try and do is make donations to things like schools and like a fund to make sure that there are those communities that help people, because I think we've all probably had an experience where we not necessarily had a community to help that with. And I think having any form of community, no matter how big or small, or actually what you're really doing in that hobby space, is important. If it's just friends to play with, that's great. But if you can make sure to get some people together, fill a room with random sprue and bits and see what comes out of it at the end, maybe you make a game out of it, and that's important. Or play other people's games as well. There are plenty of great games out there, small ones or even bigger ones, and yeah, just doing things like that is probably a great way to get started. Just look around, failing that Fringe.
Well, of course, I also have stuff to say, because we organize events over the continent because everything's always happening in the UK. Not enough things are happening in Europe. So we organize events in Belgium, Netherlands. We're trying to expand as well. But we basically started with a small Discord community because everyone's on Discord. And through that way, I discovered there's loads more people who live extremely close, almost neighbors who also are into kit bashing. For me, it took a while to find my people, but once you find your people, just keep them close, never let them leave.
Yeah.
And we put on, like, you start an event where you just rent a table at your local board game store, and other people will see you play games and might want to join you. For our events, we have a huge, like, a small swimming pool of bits, which we were hoping to fill, and we were really scared we wouldn't be able to fill it. But once we did a large call of, like, who has bits spare, there were loads of people who've been in the hobby for a very long time and weren't as active as they used to be. And we had so many donations. So even if you don't have bits to share with 10 of your friends, there's always people who've been in the hobby for a long time who are willing to donate stuff. And I think, if you find a small community of people, you'll be surprised how quickly it will expand into a really big group. And you get to spend a whole weekend with with all your weird miniature friends.
And what is that called for the people that didn't hear that? And what is that called for the people that want to get involved in that?
Yeah, so we organize Camping Kit Bash in Belgium. It's a very fun event. And this year we'll be spending 3 days in a castle, kit bashing, painting, playing games. Don't all come, because we do like to keep it very small. If everyone at Salute would come, it would not be cozy anymore, and we would like to have a cozy time.
One of those clubs, is it exclusive, is it? Okay, I won't be coming. Point taken.
Nothing is exclusive, but to keep things small and cozy, and to be able to meet everyone, because I don't think I'll be able to talk to everyone who is currently here at Salute today. That would be insane.
Is there any other questions anyone has? Anything like to say?
I was wondering what the panel thought about companies that tend to bring in rule sets every like 18 months or so. The kind of demand of like how that changes books, how that changes people's kind of like playing habits with models, whether the demand for constant rule changing from consumers or perhaps even from the companies themselves is pushing for more consumerism as well as just causing more environmental harm as a result. I wonder what the panel
Ben,
sort
do you
of
want to
thoughts
say
on
more?
that.
Yeah, so I think we all know those sorts of companies. I think there's a certain kind of chicken and egg loop where is that kind of, sometimes bi-weekly release cycle, is that creating an expectation amongst consumers that's driving that kind of FOMO, the fear of missing out that we talk about. But at the same time, collectively, as consumers, we're going along with it and we're consenting by buying the product. It's not necessarily a popular opinion, but I think you should treat miniatures companies that also make rules for those miniatures possibly with some care, because one's going to try and sell the other, right? They make a product that makes you want to consume more things. They'll release rules that are better for the new units to try and make you buy the new units. So, which is a very effective marketing strategy, and it plays to, I think, all the psychological aspects of wanting to have fun in the hobby and to enjoy your games. So for me, that's another argument for pursuing the more kind of miniature agnostic, smaller games, because it's more about, this is a really fun game and it exists as a thing and it won't constantly be changing and being, expanded upon, and things won't be obsolete and taken out. It's less to do with, we've got a pipeline of models that we're churning out and we need to come up with new ways to sell them, which is why I think, a company that does both things has an agenda, which is absolutely fine. That's what they're trying to do, but it's costly for the environment.
I mean, I completely agree with everything you just said. I do think that a way that, because it does come down to consumer behavior at the end of the day. It's how we respond to them putting out new rules, whether you choose to buy new products or not, right? I think a healthy way to still enjoy the products from these companies is to not care whether you're good at the game. I find this personally, I enjoy playing my 40k despite the fact that I don't know when the last time I won was, but I enjoy throwing down large numbers of dice with a friend. I don't play competitively. To me, it's the pastime that matters. So I think it's absolutely possible to engage with these companies, and I would far rather that, yeah, they did put the rules out slightly less frequently, but if you take a step back and refuse to let that guide your consumer choices, then you can retain a certain amount of control over it, I think. But yeah, I completely agree. Guys, fundamentally, the problem's capitalism, all right? So that's kind of, we were all thinking it. But yeah, that's kind of the root of that question.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, companies put out books every month or however long, and you don't have to buy them. There are plenty of people that are still playing like second edition Warhammer. Just be them. Just do that. If there's a particular edition that you like, that you want to play, just play that. Yeah. Or find, if you particularly don't like it and don't want to miss out, then there are plenty of games where they don't change the rules and rules just stay the same. And that's perfectly okay too.
I just want to ask, I don't really play Warhammer that much when I was a kid. So they keep bringing out new editions every couple of years, right? When do they get it right? When's it finished?
When's the final Warhammer?
Yeah, when have they like sorted out all the little bugs and then made a game that's good? Did they just remake it again?
I think it's when they stop making money on it.
Okay, that's the answer. There we go. I'm very naive. Thanks, everyone.
Any other questions we have?
So obviously you've mentioned things like reusing sprues or reusing coffee grounds. I mean, I've got an enormous pile of packaging left over from a 3D printer that I bought. What is something that you use that you think is either completely underutilized or completely overlooked when it comes to recycling things for hobby usage?
I mean, that is a very good question.
I have been thinking a lot about when you do 3D printing, like all the supports. That's something that I'm still looking for a good solution of what to do with it, because I've thought about, like with molding and casting, is there a way that we can turn those supports into something else? Maybe if you do sci-fi terrain, I keep so many bits for sci-fi terrain, but I still have never kit bashed something sci-fi. But I will give the mic to Ben.
I use those supports to mix my paint. So anything where I would normally need like a matchstick or a cocktail stick or something, I just make sure I cure my supports and then use those, or like dabbing super glue and stuff. It's just one of those, it's just a really useful little stick to do stuff with.
It's too big of a question for me. I mean, I use everything. Spray bottle heads. Like, there's so many. If you want to make sci-fi terrain, smash a spray bottle head open. There's everything in there. You can literally just stick that on a table and it looks like some sort of machine. But yeah, so much. I don't know. Everything. You can use everything.
And just like something as simple as boxes. Lots of games love using ruined cities. A box is like a ruined city waiting to happen. It just cut it up, cut some window holes in it, and that's a building. That's literally what I used to do when I started getting into Warhammer and I couldn't afford all the terrain. I would just cut up a cardboard box, and then that's the corner of a ruined building, and yeah. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't last, because at the end of the day, it's
I also
cardboard.
had like cardboard, mulch it and mix it with PVA glue. You can make hills, rocks, anything. Yeah. So I made a video about that. You can Bill making stuff as the channel.
So what's
Plugs
your
at the end.
channel? I forgot.
Bill makes things.
Dan does.
Get out. Get out. He's not here. He's not here.
I mean, the only thing that I can specifically say on this is I'm still using the plastic from 2000s era blister packs. That's whenever I need a window or if I need to mount resin on top of something, because I'm doing a killer can that's like an open coconut with a cocktail inside it, and that the bit underneath is just the bit of a blister pack. But I do think, just to expand on something I said previously, I think the packaging is a perfect example of how, as a consumer, it doesn't kind of matter, your environmental impact of the wrapping that something comes in, for example. That is entirely in the hands of the company. And so that's a perfect example of how in order to limit our impact, you need to actually change how the company does things and how they package things. It doesn't actually change the product at all, but if we can change how they ship the product to you, that's potentially a huge amount of plastic every year that can be averted from entering into the environment. So, yeah.
Yeah, I make my own miniatures as well. I don't make huge amounts, so I've used a lot of packaging that I've bought miniatures in, and then I just put my own miniatures in there and resell them, and I've never bought packaging in my life.
You pretend they're Games Workshop miniatures.
They don't look anything like that, but it's a really good option for me personally. I don't know if it's relevant to you, but reusing packaging it's fun as well.
Yeah, start a hobby empire. That's use the packaging for that. Any other questions?
Hiya. You've talked so far a lot about environmental impact, but of course sustainability has a lot of dimensions. So perhaps it's a very open-ended question, but perhaps you have something to share about some of the other aspects about sustainability as well. So yeah, curious about that.
So for me, sustainability is in part about making sure future generations can do what we're doing, and not making sure anything that we're doing now is not preventing future generations from doing things. So for me, a big part of the community is like inspiring the next generation of hobbyists. Getting young people involved, young members of your family, and showing them how to do stuff, because that's a type of sustainability. It literally sustains our hobby and keeps it going. Because when you look around Salute, it does tend to be skewing in one direction age-wise, possibly. So I think that's a kind of an offshoot of sustainability that's important.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the things I've tried doing, getting in schools and things like that, is another great example, because kids do love things like this. Kids love outlets for creativity, and I think part of it is that they just don't often have the chance to learn about it. In my experience going through the school system, they don't overly like creative hobbies and creative subjects. So more examples of those in schools and youth groups and local communities is a great way to kind of expand on that. And yeah, getting younger people, newer generations into wargaming, allowing them to do it in kind of exactly the same way we have been is a great way to kind of improve sustainability and keep it going for a longer time.
I think that's once again where community events also come in, because not everyone, especially young people, have access to a lot of hobby stuff, because hobbying, especially at the start, can be a little bit expensive. So if you can go to a hobby event, as a student, I wouldn't have money to buy a box of Warhammer, if I'm honest. So if you can share your stuff to other generations. And I think also the miniature wargaming community is a lovely space where a lot of younger and older people can come together and play games together. So, yeah.
Not to blow my own trumpet again, but my whole channel is about kids getting into it. We're using what they have around the house. Sorry, Bill Maker stuff. It's on YouTube.
I think one way to answer that question is to consider, what do we want the hobbying landscape to look like in the year 2100? What does a hobbying landscape look like that you'd look at it in 80 years' time and say, oh yeah, that looks like it's going to keep going, right? The environmental impact is possibly the largest component of that. That's why we've focused on it. But I do think that a landscape that would look sustainable to me is one that is not dominated by a handful of companies for 80 to 90% of the trade. I think a sustainable landscape is one that has lots of smaller companies, smaller actors that innovate, that have much more community driven events. And so I suppose, if we're thinking about trying to make the hobby more sustainable, then I do think diversifying, because again, this because capitalism is the problem. It's diversifying who you're buying from. It's diversifying the types of creators that you're supporting, whether that's micro creators, whether that's people with 10 employees or 100 employees, and experimenting. Because I think the alternative is everything turns into the same landscape that you see with films. at the moment. You see everything dominated by a handful of mega corporations that bring in 99% of the box office revenues, and that's not something that is going to carry on forever because the line cannot continue to go up forever. So I would say that the kind of economic sustainability of it and a sustainable choice to make in that regard is to look more at indie small-scale creators.
I don't know if we have time for one more, but if we do, I'm looking around for the person. I have no idea. Yeah, over there. Thank you very much.
Hello. So, on the basis of going for the smaller creators and things like that, is there anyone that you would sit there and say these are the type of games that you should play in regards to being able to create, like the people on stage, create their own characters and bits and pieces? What sort of game should we be looking at as just sort of a reference point?
I may be slightly biased here, but do what you're passionate about. I've seen plenty of people who just want to make things because they think it'll make them money. If you make something that you truly care about and truly like, and you enjoy the concept, you have to like playing your game by yourself. If you can't play it on your own, no one else is going to want to play it, and you're not even going to be able to sell it to anyone either. So you've got to enjoy your own game, enjoy your own idea, and you'll just be able to make models out of it. That is just my own experience. I created my own game because I couldn't afford to play the kind of big, expensive games. So I made my own one, and I got really passionate about it. And I kept creating and kept making things around it, and you just build it from there. I don't think that's limited to a genre or a specific type of game or any theme. If you really feel passionately about massive open map games, build a massive open map game with 3mm models on it. If you want to go the complete opposite and make like Robot Wars, the war game, then do that. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
I just watched a documentary on the history of Robot Wars like yesterday, so
Amazing.
This is perfect. The two companies the two games, I suppose, that I would draw reference to, because I'm relatively limited, because I have very limited hobby time, I sort of stick with what I know, a lot of Games Workshop stuff. I've already mentioned Gaslands. I think that's a fantastic system because it's miniatures agnostic, because it's cheap, it's stuff that's reusable, and also small scale, very flavorful. And basically for exactly the same reasons, minus the flavorful, one-page rules. Another games company that I think is a great one to have reference for. In terms of miniatures companies, I don't know if you guys can think of anything, but I don't have as much experience in that space.
What's the question again? A good miniatures company?
Yeah, to emulate in terms of small scale creators to look to.
Mammoth Miniatures, just over there.
Oh,
I
that's
recommend.
a great shout.
I don't know, but as far as games, like just go to Ben's Instagram account, play. And honestly, his games are some of the funnest games I've played. I think that's kind of why I wanted to make a game. Ben, thank you. Or Bangarang or Skirm, or there's loads of little games out there. Just look around. But
I feel weird answering because I feel a lot of those people are also my friends. But I would say Turnip 28 is, of course, a great game for kit bashing. There's miniatures company-wise. You've got Ramshackle. You've got Bad Squiddo, who's also here, who's just a small creator. You've got Warp Miniatures, who's Alex, who is just a small family, like family company. You've got, there's probably loads of other people who you can find here. I think most people whose work I enjoy is just one guy who makes really cool stuff. There's loads of games out there. I think.
Actually, where is the best place to find those games, though? That is a good question.
Where is the best place to well, someone should make a newsletter.
Yeah, there should be like a forum, right, or something. I sound really old. Forum. You know what I mean? Should be somewhere. Discord.
A Discord.
I have my own
That's
Discord,
what the
thank you
kids
very
do
much.
these days.
Yeah, places are like things are everywhere. You just gotta look for them, really. I mean, there are Again, I've been banging on great communities. People want to make games. People want to play games. Listen to people's ideas. Play games that you would never have played before, because those are the games that you'll probably enjoy the most. I think with a lot of the hobby, people maybe use games like Warhammer as like a gateway, but that's definitely not the end there. Like, you don't just end with Warhammer. There's far more out there. search up on Instagram. Pinterest weirdly has a lot of like fun
In
examples
some
of
games, you only need like 2 dice. There are some games, I've seen them, 1 or 2 dice. Have you seen them?
I
Just-
like games with lots of dice.
Oh, like 50.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Stick
They're
with Warhammer
useless, but I wanna. I just wanna roll a lot of dice.
This is why I play orcs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think there's so many games out there. I think if there's like a specific vibe or aesthetic you like, you'll probably find someone who has made a game about that. And if there isn't, then you should make your own game.
Definitely. I think that is probably all we got time for.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Sorry.
so very
Sorry to be the killjoy.
quickly, go down the line. Where can people find you?
I'm mostly on Instagram, Apocrypha now. I've also got a Discord as well, same name.
I'm Tina Fieldling on all channels. I've got Instagram, I've got YouTube, Blue Sky, whatever. Yeah, so I make videos and pictures on the internet.
Yeah, I'm Bill Making Stuff. Have I mentioned that already? No, you can
I
find me
don't
on
think you said.
YouTube.
Sorry,
Bill
one more
Making
time?
Stuff. Bill Makes Things. Oh, even I get it wrong. Bill Making Stuff on YouTube and Instagram, and just Google it. And you'll see a few games that me and Ben have made together. Well, one game that we made together called blah blah promotion. Move on.
And most of my stuff is on YouTube. If you just search for Simon Clark, I do have a painting Instagram, which is 50 Shades of Space Wolf Grey, and there's a bunch of. I need to put some more stuff on there, but yeah, that's mostly on YouTube.
And finally, I'm Department of Wargaming on Instagram. I have a website as well. And I actually have a stand here today, so please go and buy stuff from me. Please, Diggle, please. We're at the front over that way. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Hopefully this has been helpful for you in some way. Yeah, thank you very much.